You know, there's been a lot of talk around Switch updates, specifically Switch 2 edition updates, the one that costs more money. And we've seen these prices go up to then $80 when you take, say, Tears of the Kingdom and slap the $10 on top of that, or Breath of the Wild with the DLC and the Switch 2 edition tax to $90. But there is another update. It's almost like that middle tier. This, though, it's actually free. And you know what? Some of the titles that have been reconfirmed now by Nintendo are actually kind of interesting, because one in particular is a long time coming and something I joked about now years ago, actually, and it might actually end up being real at this point. So we'll go over that here today. If you guys enjoyed the video, though, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. Let's take a look, though. This is over on Nintendo's website, the free updates for select Nintendo Switch games. And they have sort of updated this over time, reconfirmed a lot of these different titles, and unfortunately, kind of left us in the dark with some of this. I mean, this is a bit of a mystery now going into launch, exactly what this means. Okay, so we've already had the description around, say, Tears of the Kingdom, where they're going to get 4K resolution, it's going to be faster load times, 60 FPS, and yes, they use upscaling and stuff to make all of this work, but they've at least talked to us about the more tangible things we'll get out of the update here. Very noticeable. And yes, that also comes with a $10 fee on top. Or I guess if you have the NSO subscription, it'll just be there, something you can download and patch day one. But this is something I'm not really sure about here with these free updates. They say these updates to improve playability on the Nintendo Switch 2 system will be released for select Nintendo Switch games. And I've kind of asked around a bit, and everyone else is sort of like, I don't really know what to necessarily expect from this. They say by connecting your Nintendo Switch 2 to the internet, you can download free updates that may improve performance or add support for features such as game share in select games. The contents of these free updates will differ depending on the game. So game share, we know, is going to be added to Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics. It's already been mentioned by Nintendo, and it does make sense for the type of game that it is, considering it leans heavily into the multiplayer board game sort of mentality where you would want to have more people playing it without necessarily everyone needing a cartridge, okay? But I don't think that's the case for all of them, because not all these games are multiplayer. So clearly there's some other stuff that's going to be happening here. And as I'm looking up and down the list, I mean, Captain Toad, Treasure Tracker, ARMS, those aren't exactly games that were necessarily struggling on the system. I think ARMS, when you do split screen, it cuts the frame rate in half. So as an example, maybe that'll just be 60 FPS across the board. And maybe they have something with Captain Toad Treasure Tracker where they use the mouse functionality for the Switch 2 and add it in. But then I look directly next to that. Super Mario Odyssey is kind of an interesting one. It runs well on the Switch, and it does. It, for the most part, maintains 60 FPS. More times than not, obviously, but it's at times it will dip down. I think in New Donk City there are points where it'll struggle a bit. For the most part, though, it's a very clean experience all the way around, and that also comes down to the visuals. But there are a lot of tricks that happen to make that work. And overall docked, it's like 900p, and again, there's upscaling and other things at play to try to keep the frame rate prioritized over the resolution. And in handheld mode, 720p, again, a lot of tricks when it comes to lower detail objects that are further off in the background. And I think even with some of the cutscenes, they sort of do like this interlaced setup with the images. So I do think there's actually a lot of room for Mario Odyssey, which probably not a bad thing considering the system is going to launch without a 3D Mario game. So I know it's 8 years old at this point almost, right? It'll be 8 years old at the end of this year. But it's still a very good 3D Mario game, so I guess if you've never played it, and it's a free update. So some of these games, I might just fire up in the Switch 2 just to see if there's anything very noticeable, and then go over it in a video. Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. There's not much interesting, I feel like, on the Mario 3D World side, but Bowser's Fury there absolutely is, because that's like 720p docked, I believe. And then in handheld mode, they cut the frame rate just in half. It's 30 FPS. So it seems like a patch for this would make a lot of sense to maybe raise the... I'm trying to figure out if this is a situation of the update is just going to make the games aware of the Switch 2's extended hardware. as opposed to the other tier of backwards compatibility, which is just, it works. Like, Nintendo has an entire page of thousands and thousands of games that have tested to work through their emulation hardware hybrid solution. And I assume these games will just be more aware of the Switch 2's stronger GPU, extended memory bandwidth, etc. So Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, maybe that's one that they do bump up to 60 FPS in handheld mode. That shouldn't be too much of an issue there, I would assume. And then who knows, maybe docked mode, they do a bit more to where they smooth out the frame rate completely, because that can have issues then when you're, especially in the larger world, when you're looking around and Bowser's going crazy. Maybe they do try to raise the resolution. I'm thinking a lot of these games are just going to have much smoother experiences for the most part, unless they decide to add extended functionality. But these two, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening and then Echoes of Wisdom, I mean, they do need some help. I don't know what it was about these games with Grezzo, but like for Link's Awakening as an example from them, it would have a lot of issues in the overworld. I mean, the frame rate was all over the place. It was rough, a lot of stuttering, just very inconsistent, and it was super noticeable because when you were indoors, I remember it was pretty smooth. It's just outdoors, not so much, and it seemed like a lot of that had to do with the memory bandwidth that was quite limited compared to the Switch 2. So if that is the case, as we're assuming, I feel like the Switch 2 should pretty much alleviate that completely. Like, I would assume that game with a patch here would just be locked 60 across the board, indoors and outdoors. And that would also come down to Echoes of Wisdom. That's a game that it was tough at times playing that game because the performance, especially as you got further in and you learned more and more echoes and you had all kinds of stuff happening on screen, it struggled. The system was really having a hard time with that game, and it was quite noticeable. So that would actually be one that I would go back to and play more of with the Switch 2. Game Builder Garage, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if this is more a functionality thing like the mouse. That would make a lot of sense for Game Builder Garage if you think about it, especially in docked mode where you could use the mouse to help you move around some of the points and connect boxes and design a game. I guess also just for performance in general, especially on the CPU side, it could help with that. I have no idea what New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is other than just the resolution, the frame rate will hug the max target more times than not. I mean, I know it is a... along with that, though, that's technically an older game brought up. But like the Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is a Wii U game that was brought up. So, okay, what else are they really going to do here? It's one of the reasons I didn't really care as much about Mario 3D World, because it's a Wii U game that was brought up to a more powerful system than that, and it runs fine. The big one, though. This is the one I was joking about. Oh, also Big Brain Academy. Not really a big brain person, I assume, which you probably tell by some of the pronunciations I have at times in Newswave. But I assume that might also use the mouse functionality, potentially, to add something to the game, or just make the gameplay a bit better or more intuitive. The elephant in the room, though. And it's funny they should have just put these both these, Scarlet and Violet, put it at the top. This is the one to try. I am so curious about this either of these games running on the Switch 2. And I think it's funny because you feel like I get the Switch 2 and I fire up Mario Kart 1. I probably will, but it's kind of a toss-up for me because I have to find out if Game Freak legitimately did an update here that helps this game, because it needs it. It does. They said a while ago when there was so much backlash around this, because these games just do not run well on the Switch. They are quite broken, actually. I mean, all the glitches and stuff, sure, that was really funny at times. Some of the stuff that was going on, some of the screenshots people had. But the game itself is just unpleasant to play. The frame rate is atrocious. The resolution's all over the place. The textures are super low quality. If you try to play multiplayer online, it was terrible. It was almost slideshow at times if you had too many people running around with you. So I almost wonder if Scarlet and Violet, with an update patch for the Switch 2, would work to stabilize the frame rate. And it's Game Freak, so we are shooting for like 30 FPS here. You know, I do wonder if they could actually have it sharpen up some of the textures that you have in the game as well, and fix the pop-in. The pop-in is just so noticeable in this game constantly. And I mean, I joked about the patch that they're talking about for this game, Scarlet and Violet, either one. is the Switch 2, is the hardware. That's the patch. It's not anything they're going to be able to do on the current Switch, because Game Freak, they just pushed further than they were able to really go, and it was quite noticeable in the game. I guess the Switch 2 can come in and kind of fix it for them. That really is where we are with this. The Switch 2 is legitimately, the hardware is the patch for Scarlet and Violet. So it might not be the first game that I put in. It's definitely the second game. I'm going for that immediately. I'm popping in my copy of Violet, and I'm finding out exactly what Game Freak pushed in an update. And if this thing is still running poorly on the Switch 2, Game Freak, I don't know what to tell you. You got to figure something out, because that's just gotten embarrassing then. But with all the talk of the Switch 2 being extremely expensive and money getting thrown everywhere to do very basic things at times for the system, that there are at least some free things here with these updates for games that you may already own, or who knows, maybe look into now if it runs actually decent, like, again, Scarlet and Violet, or hey, Link's Awakening or Echoes of Wisdom. If those are like locked 60, those would be incredibly good experiences that I would absolutely recommend at that point without any real drawbacks. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Are there any games getting a free update for the Switch 2, if you're getting the Switch 2, that you're going to try out maybe after Mario Kart World or another Switch 2 specific game they were picking it up for? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.